This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Matt Lowe of Master Control about quality in regulated environments.
Yes, plus learning lessons from General Electric. That and more when we come back. And welcome back to Quality Digest Live for November 16th, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest editor-in-chief, Dirk Ducharme. This week we got the announcements that the U.S. Department of Commerce has announced this year's Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award recipients. The Baldrige Award, I'm sure all of you are familiar, but I'll fill you in if you don't. The Baldrige Award is a presidential level honor that recognizes U.S. organizations and businesses that demonstrate an unceasing drive for radical innovation, thoughtful leadership, and administrative improvement. And this year's recipients, this is interesting, include 2 educational institutions, an organ donor group, a hospital, and a project management team. They are as follows. I'll just run through who they are real quick. We got Alamo Colleges District in San Antonio, Texas, which is education, obviously. Donor Alliance in Denver, Colorado, which is a nonprofit. And Integrated Project Management Company, Inc., in Burr Ridge, Illinois, which is a small business. Memorial Hospital and Healthcare Center in Jasper, Indiana, which is in healthcare. In Tri-County Tech in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, which is education. So the thing that's interesting is we almost never see manufacturing anymore. Now, in the early days of Baldrige, it was the other way around. It was all
That's all you saw.
All manufacturing.
For the first 10 years, I think it was nothing but manufacturers.
Yeah, even though nonprofits were part of the original Baldrige group, and then they added education and healthcare, and boy, once they added education and healthcare, that's almost all you see.
Healthcare in particular.
Healthcare in particular, but education shows up quite frequently as well. And then all of a sudden, like, no manufacturers. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure where manufacturing lost interest in applying for the Baldrige, and it was taken up by healthcare and education, or I'm not sure what the dynamic is there.
I don't know. I mean, we all have some theories about these types of things. I mean, I think that a lot of the initial low-hanging fruit in the Baldrige, the Baldrige program, the Baldrige framework, was found in manufacturing. Manufacturing was really the impetus of a lot of the quality initiatives that really started, it really culminated in the 80s with things like Baldrige with ISO 9001 at the same time. Really started launching. Six Sigma really was in the water at that time too. So I think a lot of these things were manufacturing based, and I almost feel like, I don't want to say it ran its course within manufacturing, but I think that a lot of the low-hanging fruit was plucked in manufacturing already, and now it's really driven much more deeply into the organization, and they're not applying for things like Baldrige as much anymore. And we've seen ISO 9001 registrations going down a bit too. So I think that these other organizations, healthcare, education, I don't remember seeing a project management company.
I know, that's kind of interesting. I think to kind of add to that a little bit is, and this is just my impression, is I think within manufacturing, Baldrige was this very prestigious award. And it still is a prestigious award, but I think over time, manufacturing just kind of went, do we really care? I mean, what's more important to us is, ISO 9001 certification and getting on board with lean and so on and so forth. And the Baldrige is kind of nice. It's a nice kudo. Whereas I think education and healthcare really look at Baldrige, and trying to meet the Baldrige criteria really is a means of improving their organization. So rather than improving it through kind of the things that manufacturing are doing, they look at Baldrige as, if we go through the Baldrige program, we're going to come out a better company. And I think that's really why a lot of these guys are pursuing it.
And that's a good point. I mean, the framework is extremely rigorous. I mean, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Baldrige framework, it's a very, very rigorous procedure. I mean, there are site visits, there are interviews, there's a lot of paperwork that's involved.
And they cover every aspect of your.
I mean, they get right up your information to determine what you're doing and make sure. And you know, many people will say that really the value of the Baldrige process was the opportunities for improvement.
Right.
That information they get from the Baldrige examiners, and Baldrige examiners are very high level quality folks. They really understand how to leverage improvement in an organization. When you get those opportunities for improvement from that group, from the Baldrige examiners, and it's many times fairly lengthy lists of opportunities, you really know with a certainty that's where your laser focus needs to be in improving your organization.
Right.
So it may not necessarily, yes, winning a Baldrige is very prestigious, as you say, but the process, whether you win it or not, going through the process for those who have done it, we understand is really where the value lies. So it's a really interesting thing. You know, we're going to talk more about this, not today, but we're going to talk more about it on coming shows and in other interviews we want to do, where we're going to examine this a little bit and maybe try to talk to some Baldrige winners, and maybe try to talk to, we mentioned maybe even talk to some old Baldrige manufacturing winners to see what their thoughts are on what's changed and why maybe it's gotten away from it. So we'll be bringing that to you hopefully here in upcoming shows.
That's right.
Right. All right. Well, this week actually, we brought you a special report looking at quality within the life sciences industries. And one of the pieces in that series was written by Matthew M. Lowe, and he's the Executive Vice President of Master Control. Lowe's article, Top 5 Things Life Sciences Companies Need to Know About ISO and FDA Requirements, helped kick off our special report this past Tuesday, November 13th. So joining us now to discuss his article and share some practical advice for those within the space is the man himself, Matthew Lowe. So Matt, thanks for joining us on Quality Digest Live.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's good to be here.
Of course, it's our pleasure.
So Matt, to start off, the FDA and let's say ISO look at compliance in a different way. Can you kind of contrast the way FDA defines compliance maybe in the way an ISO standard might define compliance?
Certainly, yeah, it's a great question. Particularly when you use the word compliance. Compliance really only pertains to FDA. FDA is a regulation. It's a law in the United States. If you're going to play in the United States market, you've got to comply with FDA regulations. Whereas with ISO standards, really what you're doing there is conforming with a standard. When your ISO auditor comes into the building, that's a voluntary thing. You're actually paying that ISO notified body to come in and do that audit. Whereas the FDA, they show up with a badge, and it's a very different kind of a situation.
Yeah, the joke is FDA auditors are auditors with guns.
Yeah, exactly. And I can tell you from past experience, I've seen one that does carry a gun. Yeah. So most of them don't, but there are a few that do. As far as what it means between the two, with the issuance of the latest standard, on the med device side, 13485, ISO really came a lot closer to FDA than they have been in the past. And of course, the 13485 standard is well accepted globally in other geographies where you're going to have to comply with certain regulations. So they're fairly close together, but there is a difference between compliance and conforming.
And Matt, we just were covering Baldrige, and we talked about some of the differences between manufacturing and other industries from the framework of the Baldrige. Now, for obvious reasons, those in life sciences and life science industry, they have very stringent quality practices. So what are some of the key differences between them, those in that sector, versus like general sector manufacturing, let's say, in terms of managing their processes and their procedures?
Certainly. Well, just pointing back to kind of our discussion there at the beginning, you're in general manufacturing, when you're, for example, going for a 9000 or a 9001 certification, your BSI or your TUV auditor isn't going to chain up your doors if you've got some observations, right? In the life sciences industry, that is very much a reality. CEOs go to jail for non-compliance. So there's definitely a gravity difference there between the two. And for obvious reasons, those regulations are there to protect public health and safety. As far as what you're doing in general manufacturing versus life sciences, the standards and the regulations are really designed to make you a better business. If you're following those things, doing those things, you're going to put out a high quality product, which everybody wants to do, whether you're in general manufacturing or pharmaceutical or med devices, whatever it may be. So that's a big part of it.
And you write in your piece kind of at a high level about these 5 things that that those in this space need to be aware of. Can you kind of give us just an overview of what those 5 things that you write about are?
Yeah, sure. So really kind of common sense type things. The first one is that compliance from an FDA perspective or conformity from an ISO perspective is really in the proof. They are looking for artifacts. What are the outcomes of that? Have you documented things? So that's a very important piece of it. As far as what you do from a compliance perspective, it is a collaborative process. It's not just the quality or the regulatory department's job. Everyone has to be involved in that process. Kind of pointing back to the proof is in the pudding there. Digital technologies can really help out in that regard. Because there is this very real situation of having your doors chained up, making sure that proof is somewhere that is easily accessible, it's efficient for your business, so it's not something that's dragging you down. You do have the validation requirement that is associated in the life sciences industries with using those technology tools. But really, that's just making sure that the tool you're utilizing is functioning as it was intended. So the digital piece becomes, I think, much more important in the life sciences industry when you're having to go through regular audits with not only FDA, but global regulatory bodies, as well as your ISO notified body.
And we understand that people in this industry, there really are still some that are using, not really using the most advanced tools. Some people are still using binders, actually, we understand. So give us the case maybe for the digitalization piece of this and what you get from that, from the ability to communicate better throughout your organization using that.
Absolutely. Yeah, even for companies that may think they're using technology, digital technologies to improve their quality situation, in a lot of cases, they're using one-off access databases or a SharePoint instance. They're using Excel spreadsheets. They're all very disjointed. And that's obviously the case with binders or a filing cabinet full of folders. Being able to tie together the different aspects of your quality system, get the data out of those, compare across your different quality event channels. You think about non-conforming material, corrective and preventative action, customer complaints, being able to see all of those things quickly and report on them in a way that there's not a lot of burden in that. It can really go a long ways into improving your business from an efficiency perspective. You kind of get the compliance side by default. But as I say in my article, compliance doesn't necessarily mean quality. Ultimately, what you're after is a high quality product that's going to perform well. It's going to achieve its intended purpose, and it's going to be safe and effective in the public.
And in terms of dealing with the FDA, Is there any value to these electronic tools, these IT tools, when dealing with the FDA? Does it make the audit easier? Does the FDA prefer it in some way so that maybe you're getting kind of a leg up with the FDA if you're doing some sort of automated system?
Yeah, there is definitely, they can't by law require you to do it. But in today's day and age, there is an expectation that you're employing technology in some way to meet those regulations. A good example is the MD SAP program that FDA is participating in now. I've talked to folks in the industry that have gone through their MD SAP audit, and the auditor is actually timing how long it takes you to retrieve a piece of documentation or an artifact that they've asked for. And clearly technology is something that can help with that.
Well, Matt Lowe, thanks for joining us today on Quality Digest Live and give us some insight into this important information. I think it's really valuable for anyone in the life sciences industry to understand this. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right, appreciate it. That was Matt Lowe of Master Control joining us there to chat with us a little bit about life sciences and quality.
And if you want to read, so we toot our own horn here, we actually have Matt mentioned MD SAP at toward the end of his interview there. We do actually have an article on kind of the updates on MD SAP. That deadline is coming, as those of you who are working in this field know, the deadline is coming really close, December 31st. So you might want to read that article on MD SAP. Actually, you can find it if you link to Matt's article. There's all the other articles in the series are listed there, and you'll see the MD SAP one. That'll give you the latest updates on MD SAP. So.
That's right. Thanks, Dirk, for that.
Sure.
All right. Well, now, many times, and I think maybe it's probably too often, actually, I think that all of us kind of in the quality space, wherever we are, we kind of emulate or want to emulate the biggest companies, the big 800-pound gorillas, and because we assume that they know what they're doing, right? So we try to emulate them and what they're doing in their quality pursuits. But there's a certain limitation to what even very large organizations can teach us about performance excellence. And that's really the lesson in the article, GE's Lessons Won't Determine Whether You Succeed or Fail, written by James De Silva of the Smart Brief blog. And it highlights this exact quandary we're talking about here. The piece first appeared on the Smart Brief blog early last month in October, and we linked out to it last week's Wednesday issue of the QD newsletter. De Silva's article talks about some of General Electric's ongoing struggles, which have been reflected for quite some time, actually, a long period of time, in declining stock market prices, which is really the symptom of a deeper problem, and most recently culminated in the firing of their erstwhile CEO, John Flannery. As the title of the piece indicates, there are some real limitations here in terms of drawing firm conclusions from GE's experiences, which, I mean, really in a certain sense are unique, but there are some basic takeaways I think that we can consider here, and I think that that's really what we're talking about here in this piece, and De Silva's talking about is, it's not necessarily a direct line between what GE is doing and what you're doing, but there's basic things that's happened to them that we should consider, all of us, wherever we are, small media company like Quality Digest or other large companies that maybe we want to think about. The first thing he points to, De Silva, is, can you say what your organization does?
What do we do?
What do we do, right? I mean, it's mission statement, vision, all those things. I mean, understanding and communicating the mission statement, this is key, both inside and outside the organization is key. Many times we talk about wanting to communicate that mission statement to our customers, to our suppliers, those are outside, but it's as important, it probably is more important actually, to communicate it internally, so that those that work with you on your team understand why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, we've wrestled with this one ourselves.
And I got to tell you, those are hard to come up with.
They're tough.
To come up with a mission, a vision and mission statement that actually makes sense for everybody.
And those are
really
different.
hard.
And those are different.
And
things.
those are different things.
Those are different things. People conflate those, but those are different things as well. So it's really important to think about that. The next one is, and these are kind of a little scattershot, but they're all interesting. Are outsider CEOs better? I mean, it depends. I mean, then
outsider CEO.
Well, I mean, bringing in people that haven't come up through your organization,
right? Okay.
And this is for maybe bigger companies,
right.
De Silva really argues that it depends. I mean, he says that mindset is more important than specific experiences. I mean, for managers, especially top managers, you want to have somebody who's going to challenge conventional wisdom and take smart risks. That's really important. So,
sure.
I mean, it's not so much did they come up with their organization. Have they spent 20 years working their way through the ranks? there could be some value to that.
Yeah.
But more important is what kind of a mindset do they have? Are they smart risk takers? You don't want somebody who's just a gunslinger who comes in and just starts making changes, but somebody who understands, well, and GE's case, this is pretty important, our model's changing. You know, we're a big behemoth, we're a double-digit billion-dollar company, but yet we need to take chances, we need to take risks, we need to innovate. You need the right mindset to do that. You can't be too high down. And actually, to tell you the truth, maybe an outsider CEO in that case is better
I was going to say,
to come in, and so you don't have the "we've always done it this way" thing, which is a key problem. Another one is don't underestimate the difficulty of big changes. I mean, it's easy to get lost when you're changing a mission statement or installing a new management team, but you can always keep yourself on track if you play to your strengths and focus on differentiation. That's really key, and it kind of goes back to your mission. If you understand what those things are, all your actions can flow from that. You have to understand what you do, who you are, and what you do really well. If you try to make big changes, if you say, okay, well, we're going to innovate, we're going to try to be a destructive force within our industry. We're going to try to blow it up, and we're going to try to change things. You can do that, and if you're a GE, you have a lot of resources to throw at that, but you better understand how it connects to your mission. Because if you don't, what do you get? You just get a bunch of spaghetti you're thrown at the wall, and it's some that may stick, but it's not really going to be linked to what it is that you do really well. That's an important one. De Silva's kicker was a good one here. This is subhead. But we can learn from them anyway. So he's saying that their lessons may not apply to you, but we can learn from them anyway. I mean, basically he's saying that there's maybe not a direct link or line between GE's performance and that of your organization, our organization here, but there's valuable information that you can gather, and it's important to keep that in mind that, you know, again, we all want to look at the GEs of the world, or the Walmarts of the world, or Boeings, or whomever it is, these large companies, and say, well, they're like us. Let's in a certain sense, let's see what they're doing and emulate them. You can, I mean, you don't want to take that too far. You want to be mindful of what they've done, what their traps maybe have been, and try to learn from it a little bit, but you also need to more be understanding of your own culture and what you do to get those lessons.
I mean, I think it's the difference between copying versus understanding what a company was trying to do. I mean, so I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't necessarily look at let's copy the steps that they did. It's kind of like, what were they trying to accomplish with these steps? Where were they trying to go? And then you create your own set of steps.
You know, it's interesting. You think about this. Just to spend another minute or two on this, is that you look at how these lessons of quality evolve, and quality is a pretty amorphous thing in terms of sectors and how it works. You think about Toyota. And you think about the Toyota production system, where that came from. If you read the history, some of it came from like supermarkets, right? I mean, if you look at it, from the founders of Toyota looking at the way supermarkets handled out of stock and handled, you know, fulfillment of stuff and just in time, came from this idea. And then you look at where manufacturing was in the 70s and 80s and how they consolidated some of the lessons of lean and TPS. And then you look at healthcare, studying that and saying, well, again, it's different. What we're doing, our deliverables are different, but the overall theme of quality and the way you handle processes is the same. So quality really was adapted from manufacturing for healthcare. Now you see the Baldrige kind of evolving from manufacturing to healthcare. So it's interesting that you see these lessons move from sector to sector, but the basics are not dissimilar at all about how you fulfill customer requirements.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when we you mentioned healthcare. So when we read articles or books by, let's say, Mark Graban, who works within the healthcare industry, or Davis Balistracci, who works in the healthcare industry, and you look at what they're saying, and you kind of scratch over where they mention healthcare or whatever, and you see it's the same story. When you're trying to accomplish something, when you're trying to improve the quality of your organization, the steps and the mindset are really the same no matter where you're at. So again, it comes down to, am I really trying to copy steps, or am I trying to understand where is their mindset? How are they thinking this through? And if I do that in my organization, then what steps do I take? So it's the same goals, let's say customer service or product improvement or whatever it is, but depending on your company, you're going to take a different line on it.
Right. And it's important to do that. I mean, because again, there are lessons. There are some general lessons, and there's specific lessons too, but the overall fulfillment of quality is really about customer requirements. And it doesn't really matter if it's a widget you're producing in a factory, if it's a patient. I mean, obviously there's bigger risks when you're dealing with the life sciences. But I mean, the process of delivering good quality, a process that works, is kind of the same, really, wherever it is in whatever sector you're in.
Yep.
It's good lesson there.
Okay, well, before we close our show today, I'm going to give you a little report. As a lot of you know, Quality Digest is located in Chico, California, which is just down the hill from Paradise, California, which is where the big campfire is going on. So obviously this has had an impact on us and our employees. And we've had a lot of people, advertisers, viewers, readers, writing to us saying, hey, how are things going and stuff. So for you guys, we just wanted to give you an update. We did have 4 of our team who live in and around Paradise. 2 of them did lose their homes. 2 of them did not. It's pretty amazing. The map of one of those people who didn't lose their homes, you look at the structure map, structure destruction map, and you see this one little house, and every single house around it is burned to the ground. And it's you go, how does that even happen? And yet there's spots like that all over Paradise. So people want to know how they could help. Quality Digest set up a GoFundMe account. Quality Digest, by the way, is obviously helping our employees. We're paying their salaries while they're out of work, and there's some other things that we're doing to help them get settled. But people want to know how they could help as well. So we set up a GoFundMe account for these 4 employees who are displaced right now, and we'll disperse from that to help these guys out as they go through this recovery period. But we also, underneath the player page, also included 2 GoFundMe accounts specific to 2 of the people who lost their homes. And have families. So we've got Christopher Martin's GoFundMe in there. Christopher is our sales rep, one of our sales reps. His house was completely destroyed. He's got 2 young kids. Fortunately, we were able to relocate him into an apartment that Quality Digest keeps down here in Chico, so his family is safe and has a home. Christopher Smith, who is our producer and videographer and director of this show and a lot of other video stuff that does, he also lost his home. He's got a young boy in high school and a boy who just graduated. He's been able to relocate to an RV that was supplied by a family member. So he's got a place over his head right now. But obviously, a lot of reconstruction that has to go on, months and months. Most likely, neither one of them particularly want to move back, as you might imagine.
Obviously, many of you out there have been following the story on the news. It doesn't do it justice to say that Paradise was destroyed. I mean, Paradise was wiped from the map. I mean,
pretty much.
Does not exist.
Something only like maybe 30 or 40% of the businesses, because it was a city after all.
It's a city.
30 or 40% of the businesses are all that's left. So not only are residents gone, there's actually no businesses up there practically.
It's 25 plus thousand people live up there. So it's a disaster that is really inconceivable. It's about 8 miles from where we are right now. Is where the epicenter of the fire was, and is going on, still being fought now. So please consider giving and give to the Red Cross. I mean, certainly there's
whoever
victims.
You want.
I mean, if you do want to participate and give, the outpouring of support's been incredible here locally as well as throughout the country and the world. So we appreciate everyone helping our sad hearts and our friends and family. Fortunately, everyone we do know personally, I think I can say this for you as well, is safe. Everyone got out. Many people did not. Again, it's been a great tragedy. So, if you can support us, we certainly would appreciate that. Support our friends and our family. That's very much appreciated.
And for those of you who already have, because we've been announcing this GoFundMe for a while. For those of you who have already supported us, man, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate that on behalf of our friends and family. And next week's Thanksgiving.
That's right.
Believe it or not. So you all have a great Thanksgiving. We, of course, aren't here next Friday. We'll be back at you, though, on the 30th of November for the next QDL. So you guys have a great holiday next week, and we'll see you soon.
So long. Bye.